Welcome to my channel. My name is Satyam, and today in this session we will be discussing the complete DevOps roadmap for 2025. So, if anyone wants to learn DevOps, what all things he need to learn, I will tell you step by steps how to proceed. The very first thing that we have to start is we have to cover the fundamental basic fundamentals. So everyone should be aware, or everyone should be knowing this basic fundamentals. So basic fundamentals include what all things basic fundamental will include. So basic fundamentals will include your Linux knowledge, your networking knowledge, and it will include some sort of database knowledge as well. So these are kind of prerequisites for anyone who wants to upgrade themselves into DevOps. I will be explaining each and everything in detail. I will break down what all things we need to learn in Linux, what all things we need to learn in network, and what all things we need to learn in databases as well. First thing, we need to cover our basic fundamental. Once we are done with basic fundamental, then we should be learning cloud. So we should be learning any of the cloud. As of now in market, we have three types of cloud computing available. The major market is covered by AWS, followed by Azure, and then followed by GCP. Okay, so this is the second step. Step number one is to cover basic fundamental. Step number two is to cover cloud. Once you are done with this, then you should be moving to step number three, and that is basically called as DevOps. So in step number three, we will be learning DevOps, and we will be knowing what all topics are required to learn DevOps as well. Okay, now coming to Linux, what all things is required if you want to become DevOps engineer, how much Linux is required? So the question comes in everyone's mind, how much Linux is required? How much Linux is required for how much Linux is required for becoming a DevOps engineer? Okay, so if you want to learn Linux, if you want to learn complete Linux, I will tell you with the syllabus of complete Linux. So if you want to learn complete Linux, you have to cover three books. Basically, the first part is called Essay 1, then there is something called Essay 2, and then that is called Essay 3. So anyone who complete Essay 1 and Essay 2 can appear for a certification that is called as RSCSA, Red Hat Certified System Administrator. Uh, and if you complete Essay 3, then you can go for the exam that is called as RSCE, that is Red Hat Certified Engineer. But for our DevOps syllabus, we don't need to complete this entire portion. We need to cover some of the topics from Essay 1, some of the topics from Essay 2, and some of the topics from Essay 3. Okay, so what are the topics that anybody should be learning in Linux for DevOps? So first thing is we should be knowing what is operating system, what is operating system, what is operating system, what is operating system. Then we should be knowing what is kernel, what is shell. We should be knowing what is kernel, what is shell. Then we should be understanding what is Linux file system hierarchy, Linux file system hierarchy. One should know, okay, one should know Linux boot process, Linux boot process, how a Linux operating system basically boots or starts. Then you should be aware of Linux run label, what are the different type of run labels in Linux. We should be knowing you should be knowing what is root user versus normal user. Okay, what is root user versus normal user. We should knowing user administration, user administration in Linux. User administration is a topic that covers how you can create a user, how can you create a group, how can you create user and group, how can you set the permission for users and group. That we basically cover in user administration. After that, we should be aware of process management, how to manage process management. We call it process management, how a process basically should be managed in Linux. Then we should be knowing package management, how a package can be installed using yum and rpm. We should be knowing process management. We should be knowing files and files and directory permissions, right? Directory permissions. Apart from this, we should be knowing cron jobs. Cron jobs. These are some of the basics that anyone should be knowing in order to become a DevOps engineer. As a DevOps engineer, you need to know all these major concepts. There will be some more concepts apart from that, but as of now, I am mentioning these all concepts. Okay. So in the basic fundamental, these are the things that you should be learning in Linux. When it comes to network, the second part that we're gonna be covering in basic fundamental is how much network do you need, or how much networking knowledge do you need. So this is the question from all of the most of the people will have. So how much networking knowledge, how much networking knowledge we should have, we should we should have. So I will note down some of the topics which you should be knowing in order to become a DevOps engineer. These are the knowledge includes, like what is internet. You should be knowing what is internet, what is intranet, what is internet, what is intranet, what is OSI layer, TCP IP layer, TCP IP layer. You should be knowing what is subnet. Okay, what is gateway. You should be knowing what is loopback ip. You should be knowing what is IPv4 versus IPv6. You should be knowing the differences between router, switch, and bridge. What are these devices and how these devices works. These are basically called as networking devices. We should be knowing the protocols. There are certain networking protocols that everybody should be aware. Networking protocols. So there are various networking protocols, but I will name them. We should be knowing what is FTP. FTP is something called as file transfer protocol. We should be knowing SSH, what is secure shell. We should be knowing telnet. Then we should be coming up after telnet. We should be knowing DNS, DHCP, HTTP, HTTPS, NFS. Okay, these are some of the network protocols we should be knowing. After this, we should have understanding of port numbers. Port numbers are very important. Port numbers, we should be understanding what are the port numbers for this protocol. So for SSH, the port number is 22. For telnet, the port number is 23. For the DNS, the port number is 53. For DHCP, the port number is 67, 68. Okay, so and then for HTTP, we have the port number that is 80. Similarly, for HTTPS 443 and for NFS 2049. There will be much more protocols, but if you know these many protocols, these are more than enough for your basic understanding into DevOps. Okay, now On top of this, we will be adding few more concepts like HTTP error codes, HTTP error codes, error error codes. So we should be knowing what are the different type of error codes are there, like 100, 200x, 100x, 200x, 300x, 400x, and then 500x. So any DevOps engineer should understand what is the error code and what does it mean. So generally, we see the error codes like 403, 503. So we should be understanding in what situation these error codes are coming and what will be the solution for that. Apart from this, we should be understanding when it comes to networking part, we should be understanding what is NAT, that is called network address translation, and we should be uh, um, understanding, we should have understanding about REST APIs as well. What are the different REST APIs are there, and what are the use of REST API. So if you are new to REST API, you can follow a operation a word that is called CRUD, CRUD, CRUD. CRUD means create, read, update, and delete. So REST API is also very important, and NAT. So these are the things you should be knowing in networking section. Now, this is the 2 points that I have covered in basic fundamental, and in the third point, how much database knowledge, how much database knowledge is required, how much database knowledge is required. So as a DevOps engineer, there is a no limit of work. You have to work on networking aspect as well, you have to work on operating system as aspect as well, and sometimes you need to work on database as well. So a very important knowledge should you should have a database knowledge at least. So basically right now we have basically two type of databases available in the market. One is basically called as RDBMS, that is called relational database management system, and another is called as non-relational database management system, non-relational database management system. So a user should know when to create a relational database management system and when to create a non-relational database management system. And you should be aware, if you are a user, and if you want to interact with a relational database management system, then you have to use SQL query, and if you want to interact with a non-relational database management system, then you have to use no SQL query. Okay. So it depend upon the type of data that we have, it depend upon the type of data we have, whether we will be creating a RDBMS or we will be creating a non-relational database management system. It totally depend upon the type of data. So generally whatever data we have with us is classified into three different categories. One is called as the structured data, structured data. One is called a structured data. Another is called as unstructured data, and then there is something called semi-structured data, structured data. So if your application is generating a structured data, you will be storing that data into a relational database management system. And if your application is generating unstructured and semi-structured data, you will be storing that data into non-relational database management system, which is sometimes called as DBMS. So a person who is willing to learn DevOps, he need to have good understanding, good basic understanding or fundamental of Linux operating system. He should be aware what is network and how it works. Okay, these concepts he should be aware. And when it comes to the knowledge level of database, for a DevOps engineer, he should be understanding when to create a relational database management system, when to create a non-relational database, how he can interact with a relational database, how can he interact with non-relational database management system. Apart from this, you should be aware of SQL queries as well. So there are SQL queries. So as I told you, key what is use of SQL. So if you see, So SQL is basically a language which is used to interact with a relational database management system. So you can talk to a relational database management system with the help of if you can talk to a relational database management system RDBMS. You can talk to a relational database management system with the help of SQL queries, and these SQL queries are further divided into three types. One is DCL, data control language, data manipulation language, and DCL, DML, and DDL, data definition language. So you must be aware or heard of these kind of queries like select query, insert query, select, insert, update, update, drop, alter, alter, truncate. So these are the SQL query, or these are the statements that we basically write in order to access a relational database management system. So for becoming a DevOps engineer, it is very important to know the basic fundamentals. These basic fundamentals will be useful across your IT career. No matters which company interview you are giving, these basics are required. If you are going for interviews like Amazon or Facebook, if you are going for anywhere, if you go to any interviews, these basic fundamentals are the are very important. Once you have your basic fundamental done, then you should be moving into cloud. So I will tell you about cloud computing. So as of now, there are at present, if we talk about, so at present in market we have three major cloud computing available. So we have cloud computing providers. So these are three major cloud computing providers available as of now. So the number one goes with AWS, and the number two goes to Azure, number two goes to Azure, and the number three cloud computing provider available is GCP. Okay, so a cloud knowledge is must. Anyone who wants to become a DevOps engineer, he need to know cloud in detail. He should have a very good knowledge of cloud computing. So I will be explaining what all things you should be knowing, what all services you should be knowing under AWS. When it comes to AWS cloud computing platform, AWS cloud computing, so what all things you should be knowing? AWS cloud computing. So for mastering AWS cloud computing, you need to know what all things. You should have basic understanding of AWS infrastructure. You should understand what are the different AWS infrastructures are there. So AWS infrastructure mainly consists of regions, availability zones, and then point of presence, POP. Okay, so these are the three basic building blocks of AWS infrastructure. So we should be aware what is region, what is availability zone, what are point of presence. After this, we should be knowing AWS billing method, AWS billing method, AWS billing method. So AWS follow a postpaid method of billing. AWS follow a postpaid method where you will be using the services for a month, and you will be paying the bills at monthly frequency or monthly interval. So you will use the services for a month, and then you will pay the month by the end of the month basically. After going in detail, you need to learn AWS services and AWS services. What are the most important AWS services with respect to interviews and with respect to your learning? I will tell you as well. So here the first service that anyone should be knowing is IAM. IAM is a service in AWS that helps you to perform user management. So if you want to manage multiple users on AWS platform, if you want to provide access to those users, you will be coming to this particular service. So IAM is a service which helps you in user management. Then you should be learning S3. S3 is a service which is called as simple storage service, and it is a service which helps you to provide unlimited storage. So this is a service related to storage. We should be learning EC2. EC2 is basically kind of virtual server. It is a virtual server in the cloud. Virtual server in the cloud. Virtual server in the cloud. Number 6 goes to EBS, that is Elastic Block Storage. This is Elastic Block Storage, and this Elastic Block Storage is related to virtual hard disk. If you are willing to, if you are willing to have some storage, if you willing to some block level storage, if you're willing to have some block level storage in AWS, you can go and use this EBS service. After this, EFS, Elastic File System, it is virtual file system. It is a virtual file system, and virtual file system, and the most important part of this file system is it's a elastic kind of file system, where you, if you keep adding the data, the size of the file system keeps growing, and if you remove the data, the size of file system will show. So EFS is very very important. And after this, you should be learning a service called as Lambda, which is basically called as serverless computing. So Lambda is basically a serverless computing. Lambda is serverless computing. It provides Lambda is generally useful for applications which are running in very less frequency. If you are running, let's take an example. If you are running a piece of code in a month, okay, you will not be provisioning a full virtual machine for that. So what you do, you basically create a function in Lambda, and you can run your code whenever you want. Okay, 9. So what next services we have to learn in AWS? To becoming a cloud engineer, you should be knowing all these services. Now after Lambda, you should be learning what is CloudTrail. You should be exposed to these kind of services: CloudTrail, CloudWatch, CloudTrail, CloudWatch. CloudTrail is kind of service that logs all your events, and it is used for auditing and governance, or you can say ki auditing and troubleshooting purpose also. We can use this particular service, CloudTrails. Then we have CloudWatch, which is basically a native monitoring tool from AWS. It is a native monitoring tool of AWS. After CloudWatch, you need to learn CloudFront. See, CloudFront is basically a managed CDN service. It's a managed CDN, content delivery network service. With the help of this service, we are watching, or the example of this particular service are Amazon Prime, Hotstar, Netflix. So with the help of CloudFront, Netflix is able to cater you the content, okay, at multiple locations. So content delivery network is a service that helps you to deliver the static as well as your contents to the nearest possible region. After CloudFront, you should be learning. Okay, number 12 goes with ELB. ELB is kind of elastic load balancer. As of now, AWS provides multiple load balancer. One is application load balancer, classic load balancer, network load balancer, and there is something called as gateway load balancer. So application load balancer is used when you want to manage the HTTP and HTTPS traffic. CLB is basically the very first load balancer. Now CLB is going, so basically it is deprecating. Deprecating means AWS is removing the support of CLB, so CLB will not be available anymore. Then we have NLB, which is network load balancer, and it is used to load balance TCP IP traffic. And there is something called as gateway load balancer. So once you learn elastic load balancer in AWS, you need to learn auto scaling. Auto scaling is a very important service, and this service helps you to scale the computing capacity whenever there is a surge in the traffic. So this service is pretty much important. After this, you need to learn ACM, that is called as Amazon Certificate Manager. It helps you to create a CA, that is a certificate authority, and it will help you to And with the help of ACM you can get your SSL certificate as well, so SSL certificate as well. So this particular service is also very very important. Number 15 goes to Route 53. Route 53 is nothing, it's a DNS service in AWS. It's a DNS service in AWS, and it helps you to host your application. It does the Route 53 helps you to resolve your host name into IP address and IP address to vice versa. After Route 53 we should be learning the heart of AWS, which is networking. So if you want to perform networking, you have to go and learn the service called VPC. VPC is quite important topic, and all of these are important topics, but VPC is one of the favorite topics for the interviewer to ask question. So a good knowledge of VPC is very very important for passing the interviews. Now coming to after VPC, we should be knowing RDS. RDS is basically managed relational database server, managed relational relational database server. So if you want to create a database server in the cloud, you can go and you can use the service called RDS. After RDS you should be learning cloud formation services like cloud formations. Then cloud formation is basically kind of infrastructure as a code service, and with the help of cloud formation you can create any resource in the cloud with the help of YAML and or JSON. Okay, and then after that you can learn elastic beanstalk. Some of the services are like ECR, Elastic Container Registry, which is used to store Docker images, Okay, so this is service also very very important. You should be knowing ECS, Elastic Container Service. So this is a managed container service. After this you should learn EKS as well. EKS is Elastic Kubernetes Service. All these services I am telling from the point perspective of DevOps. Managed Kubernetes service. Okay, there are some other services as well that you can learn. That is called Secret Manager, AWS Secret Manager, which is used to store your credentials. If you want to store any credential, you can use the service AWS Secret Manager. AWS Guard Duty, AWS Guard Duty. This is a service which is used for scanning your instances and all. So these are some of the services which are very very important from the AWS landscape, from the AWS perspective. If you are a cloud engineer, specifically if you are learning AWS and if you have knowledge in AWS, you should be knowing all these services in details, and in this and the concept has to be very very clear for all these things. Similarly, there is for Azure and GCP. So you can use this. AWS is also a cloud provider and cloud computing provider. Azure is also a cloud computing provider. Same, GCP is also cloud computing providers. Okay, so all these cloud providers share the same kind of services. So you can go and you can study a comparison between AWS, Azure and GCP. The next video that I will make where I will be comparing AWS with Azure and GCP. We will compare what all services are there in AWS, and we'll compare the same services with Azure, and we'll compare the same services with GCP as well. Okay, now we will be moving to the DevOps part. What will be the DevOps roadmap? What all things you need to learn in DevOps to become a successful DevOps engineer? So let's get started, guys. Okay. So for DevOps, what all things is required? So let me just write you now. So one sec. So when it comes to DevOps, we need to learn lot of things. I will tell you the detailed syllabus of DevOps, and we should focus on all those topics which we basically going to talk about in DevOps, guys. Okay, now, so DevOps. Uh, let me make this as red, or let me make this as black. Okay, so let's start the. Okay, so once you have good understanding of your, or once you have good understanding on the fundamentals, and then once you complete your AWS, then you can start with your DevOps. Now, some people basically ask questions. Can I directly start a DevOps if I don't have the knowledge of AWS? Yes, you can, but it's good to follow the sequence of this. So the sequence goes like this. You should be completing, you should have your basic fundamental, you should have your basic fundamental clear. Once your basic fundamental is clear, you should be doing your cloud computing, and once you are done with this, then you should be moving to DevOps part. Now, coming to DevOps syllabus, what all topics that we need to learn in DevOps? Okay, so the first thing that I want to say, when you are learning DevOps, you should understand how IT was working, how IT was working, how IT was working before DevOps, before DevOps, and how IT industry, how IT industry is working after DevOps. So we need to find the answer. What was the problem, or how, or what was the problems before DevOps people were facing, and what solution DevOps has brought to the industry? Why DevOps is used everywhere? Why everyone is following DevOps? Why all the companies are adopting DevOps? So we should be understanding that particular thing. So how IT was working before DevOps, and and how IT industry is working after DevOps coming into picture. The first thing that we need to start here. Second thing is basically we should understand what is the DevOps team structure, what are the DevOps team structure, what are the different team structure runs in industry. So if you see couple of companies, they follow a different DevOps team structure. Some companies will have different team structures for DevOps. So we need to have understanding of DevOps team structure as well. Number three basically helps. In number three, we should be covering SDLC. We should be understanding what is SDLC, and we should be understanding what is agile methods, what is agile methodology. Okay, so we should have good understanding of agile as well as SDLC. In agile, you will basically cover, you need to give more focus on what is a scrum and what is kanban. So you should give focus on scrum and kanban. SDLC was used previously, but now agile is used everywhere. You might have heard this particular term. So you should understand what was SDLC and what is agile, and in agile what is a scrum and what is kanban method of working. Number four, number four, before starting the DevOps core topics, or the before the DevOps toolings, we need to understand these things. And after this, we should have understanding of project management tools. So there are some management project management tools like Jira and Confluence. Jira and Confluence. So basically, with the help of Jira, we manage our Scrum. It's a project tracking tool where we basically track the work progress of the project. Along with that, we create epics, and epics are basically the bigger chunk of the task that we will be creating. So under a epics you will be creating multiple tasks. So with the help of Jira, in one line, with the help of Jira, you can manage your project. And Confluence is basically another tool that will help you for documentation. So in DevOps, so documentation is very important, and we use Confluence to document all the steps or the processes that we follow. Number five, number five, okay, in number five, so a good understanding of under good understanding good understanding of monolithic monolithic versus microservices. We should have good understanding of what is monolithic, what is microservices, because monolithic was used earlier, and right now the trend is going toward microservices. All the major developments are happening in microservices. So a good understanding of monolithic versus microservices is required. In number 6, we should be having good knowledge of distributed version control system. We call it DVCS, distributed version control system. Distributed version control. So distributed version control, we need to learn Git. Git is a Git is a tool which can be installed on your Windows, Mac, as well as Linux. And Git is used to track the changes that we basically perform. So Git is very important. I am not covering the details of these services. I am just pointing what are the topics a DevOps engineer should be knowing. Uh, um, mm, so let's get to another one. So we should be knowing source code management. We should have good knowledge of one of the source code management. So there are multiple services available. There are services available like GitHub, GitLab, and Bitbucket, Azure repos, Azure repo, AWS code commit. Okay, you can use any of this source code management tool, and this source code management tool is used to store your source code. Now, after this, you should have good knowledge of any of the build tools. There are various build tools available in the market depending upon what is the language you are using. You can choose Maven if your development language is Java. You can use Gradle if you are developing your code. If your code base is Java, you can use Gradle. Even you can use Ant if your code base is Java. Okay, if you are doing the development in .NET, you can use the build tool as MS Build. Okay, so these are the build tool which helps you for compilation and packaging of your application. So choose the build tool depending upon the depending upon the programming language that you use. After build tool, what is required here is we should be knowing continuous integration server. We should be knowing continuous integration continuous integration server. So continuous integration server, we will be learning Jenkins. Jenkins is one of the open source tool, and it is one of the widely used continuous integration server in the market. And number 10, we will be learning containerization tool. You might have heard of Docker is one of the famous tool available in the market for creating containers. You can use Docker, even you can use Rocket, you can use Cryo. So there are various containerization tool available in the market, but you have to choose the best for your studies. Okay, and I can suggest you can go with a Docker. Okay, now after Docker coming into picture, we should be knowing one of the container management tool or something called as orchestration tool. So we should be knowing one of the orchestration tool in the DevOps. So orchestration tool is is Kubernetes, 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 one of the most demanding tool in the current IT market. And number 12, we go with artifact repository. So a very very important artifact repository we should be knowing. And here we should be learning either Nexus or JFrog. So these are some of the two artifact repositories which is used to store the artifact. Now, so these are some of the we came across the halfway. So these are the things that we should be learning in DevOps, guys. I will add more things. So the first point is how IT was working before DevOps and how IT industry is working after DevOps. So here my main concentration would be in order to understand what are solution basically DevOps bought in IT industry, or what are the solutions uh, DevOps give to the IT ecosystems. Okay. Second is DevOps team structure, SDLC, software development lifecycle versus agile method, project management tools like Jira and Confluence, and a very good understanding of monolithic versus microservices, distributed version control system, Git, source code management, where you can learn GitHub, GitLab, Bitbucket. But if you know any of one, that would be famous. I would highlight the one which I recommend. So you can use Git as your distributed version control system. You can use GitHub. Okay, you can use Maven, you can learn Maven basically. You can use continuous integration server Jenkins. For containerization, the best tool available in the market is Docker. For orchestration, you can use Kubernetes. For artifact repository, you can go with Nexus. Okay, and let's go further. So after this, the syllabus is not yet over. We need to learn more in order to become a highly skilled DevOps engineer. So the number third is goes to code inspection tool. Code inspection tool. We should be knowing code inspection tool. We should have a good understanding. So for continuous code inspection, we will be learning Sonar Cube. So Sonar Cube is something that you can learn. Number 14 goes with IAC. IAC is a concept that called as infra as a code, infrastructure as a code. You can learn Terraform. You can learn Terraform and TerraGrant for the same. Number 15 is your configuration management tool. Configuration management tool. You should be learning one of the configuration management tool. So in configuration management tool, either you can learn Ansible, you can learn Ansible, you can learn Ansible, you can learn Ansible, or you can learn Ansible. You can let me yeah. So you can learn Ansible, you can learn Chef, you can learn Puppet. Okay. Okay. Number 16 is basically number 16 goes to monitoring and observability. Monitoring and observability. Monitoring and observability. So in monitoring and observability section, you should for monitoring and observability, for monitoring purpose, for monitoring purpose. So this is a section. Inside this section, you can use for monitoring. You can use Prometheus and Grafana. You can use Prometheus and Grafana. Okay. For monitoring your infrastructure, you can use Prometheus and Grafana. And for logging to collect the logs. Okay. So collect the logs. For logging tools, you can use either ELK, that is Elasticsearch, Logstash, Kibana, or you can use EFK, Elasticsearch, Fluentd, and Kibana, or you can use something called as a Splunk. Okay. monitoring tool, logging tool basically. For tracing, there is something called, there's a concept called tracing, also comes under monitoring and observability. So inside monitoring and observability, tracing also comes into picture. So in tracing you can use, there is an open source tool that is called open telemetry or open telemetry. And after this there is something called as alerting, alerting, alerting. So for alerting you can use a tool called pager duty pager duty. So you can use pager duty for alerting, and for tracing you can learn open telemetry. For logging tools you can use open source solutions like elk and efk or splunk. For monitoring your it infrastructure, kubernetes, you can use prometheus and grafana. Okay, number 17. Okay, so in the number 17 we will be learning something called as package management. So in package management you have to learn a very important tool right now that is called Helm is basically a package manager in Kubernetes, and it works exactly like yum in Linux. So with the help of Helm we can deploy, or we can say with the help of Helm 3 we can install anything on top of Jenkins. So Helm is also very important topic, and it is required in most of the interviews, and very important tool for a DevOps engineer. And after this you should be knowing there is something called service mesh. You should be knowing service mesh. You should be knowing service mesh. So service mesh is known as Istio. Istio is a service mesh. Istio is a service mesh. It is a kind of advanced topic, you can say. So Istio is basically used in microservice. We can write microservice like this as well. So uh, wherever microservice architecture is there, whenever microservice is deployed, so if you want to have secure communication between your microservices, you can use Istio. It's a service mesh, and it helps you to establish secure communication across your services. So basically, what is the use of Istio? So for secure communication between microservices. So secure communication between microservices. Okay, now. Okay, so number 18 is done. Number 19, very important nowadays. People are asking about this in interview. So there is something called as load balancer, and this is a load balancer from Kubernetes perspective. That is called as Nginx ingress controller. Nginx ingress controller. You should be knowing about Nginx ingress controller as well, because this is some of the topics which are mostly gets highlighted in a DevOps interview. Okay, and after this we will be touching upon one more topic, which is basically called as DevSecops. So what Devsecops means? So basically security inside security while practicing DevOps principles. So let's suppose if you are implementing your DevOps, if you are implementing DevOps in your project, so security is very important. And where all you can work on the security, where you can have security implemented. So these are some of the areas. So one is basically called as vulnerability scanning. We use vulnerability scanning. So you should be scanning vulnerabilities. For scanning vulnerabilities you can use trivia, you can use aqua, you can use trivia, you can use Yakwa, and even you can use OWASP for scanning the vulnerabilities in your code. Apart from scanning, there is something called as policy enforcement. There is policy enforcement. You can learn about policy enforcement. So policy enforcement can be done with the help of OPA, as well as OPA is called as OPA, as well as something called as gatekeeper. So with the help of gatekeeper, so you can enforce certain policies on your infrastructure. What does it means? So it means any request will be accepted by the infrastructure when it follows certain rules. That is what OPA enforce. This is called as open policy agent. And number three is called as secret management. So very very important, how you are basically managing your secrets. So secrets management, it means if you have a database, there is a username password, how you are storing the username and password of a database. If there is something, let's suppose there is Jenkins, how you are managing the username and password of a Jenkins. So for secret management, you can use HashiCorp, you can use HashiCorp Vault. And as I told you in the beginning, there is something called as AWS Secret Manager as well. AWS Secret Manager is service from AWS that helps you to manage your secrets. So these are very important concepts which is being asked. Some in DevOps interviews, they will ask you what is how you are basically doing vulnerability scanning, which tools, with the help of which tool you are scanning your Docker images, with which tool you are scanning your source code, how you are enforcing policy in your infrastructure, how you are handling secrets. So these things, these three things comes under the concept of Devsecops, which is highly important. And at the last, you should have a good knowledge, you should be understanding of DSL. DSL stands for domain specific language, guys. Domain specific language. So if somebody wants to write some CI/CD pipeline in Jenkins, so if you want to write CI/CD pipeline in Jenkins, what you will do? You will use a DSL that is called Groovy. Okay. If you want to write something on Kubernetes, if you want to write a manifest in Kubernetes, if you want to write some manifest in Kubernetes, so that manifest has to be in YAML. If you want to write a template in Ansible, okay, if you want to write a template or a playbook, okay, if you want to write a playbook in Ansible, that has to be written in YAML. Okay. So every tool in DevOps has some specific language. That's what DSL is. And if you want to write a Terraform template, if you are writing a Terraform template, basically, if you are writing a Terraform template, that template has to be in SCL. That is called HashiCorp configuration language. HashiCorp configuration language. Okay. So these are some of the 20 things which we need to know in order to become a highly skilled DevOps engineer. Okay. I hope you have understood from this particular session, for a successful DevOps engineer, for a highly skilled DevOps engineer, what are the things that is required. And you need to learn all these topics in detail. Okay. So here, that's it for this lecture. Okay. Thank you. Have a nice day. And if you find this interesting, if this helps you in your learning, kindly subscribe the channel, like the channel, and share the channel in your circle with your friends, and they can also get benefited from this lecture. Thank you.